Money loves speed, money loves action, and it's not going to come to you. It will go to where it's used.
Nick Loise founded Sales Performance Team to help small to mid-sized businesses improve their marketing and sales operations. He brings practical expertise as a successful salesperson, executive, entrepreneur, and President's Club winner.
It's not great product. It's not great food. It's not great marketing even. It's going to where hungry people are. So you got to go to where the hungry people are for your products and services and making them aware of what you do.
He shares stages with business leaders like Dan Kennedy, Russell Brunson, and Barbara Corcoran, while his academic background includes teaching positions at North Park University and Computer Science Institute.
Entrepreneurship is tough. And if it wasn't, everybody would do it. It's tough. And it takes chutzpah, and it takes gut, and it takes a lot of stuff. And I think we are the explorers of many years ago. We are the ones that went out into the world and looked for bringing other goods and services back.
This credibility comes from direct experience. He's created proven processes that businesses can replicate. And he shared a lot of this insight into today's episode. Nick, welcome to Authority in the Wild podcast.
Gabe, thanks so much for having me. And thank you for doing this podcast. I mean, like I said, it's a labor of love. We talked a little bit in the pre-show, and you've had some phenomenal guests. I'm in awe of them, and I hope that I live up to the standard that they've set prior. You're doing some amazing work, and your audience must love all the different interviews that you bring.
I appreciate that very much. Thanks. And it's an honor to have guests like you to share their knowledge, their insights, and different perspective into different topics. So can't wait to dive into sales, because you're a person that live and breathe this topic and expertise. It's one of those things that a business cannot survive without.
Yeah.
And I'd love to ask you how you got into sales in the first place, because there are so different paths out there, and we'd love to hear yours.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I agree, right? You know, we're one of those topics that everybody wants to talk to you about, right? Whether it's a cocktail party or whether you're meeting with business owners, they all think that they could be doing better on the sales side, right? It's the lifeblood of the business. So that makes it fun for us. I was lucky. I knew very early that this was something I wanted to do. I think I had a couple uncles that were salesmen, right? Or they owned their own business. But when you own your own business, you're usually the chief salesperson of the business. And I would spend time with them. And then as I was growing up, I was drawn to entrepreneurs, right, in the neighborhood, fathers that were entrepreneurs. And, I knew it was what my calling, right? Now, there's days I don't live up to it, right? So I feel bad that I don't live up to my calling, but I knew from day one that this is what I wanted to do. It morphed into entrepreneurship. In college, they would ask, what do you want to do? My goal was to be a VP of sales. And then, so it was always in me. It's something I enjoy doing, right? I started out I knew I wanted to do it, but I thought I'd be in tech sales, right? So I started out in computer science, and I went to go to look at another university to see if I should transfer there. And I saw that these guys were so far above me in their ability to program in computer sales. So I'm like, okay. So I moved into the business world and the business side of the university, and just kind of fell in love with marketing and sales, and that solidified it for me. So I've always been doing it. Started out in unglamorous sales, financial services, knocking out 100 phone calls every day, 200 phone calls every day in a cubicle, like you see in the old movies of Boiler Room, and that was what we were doing. And I just kind of got better at it every day. And it's been a life, as you can see from the books behind me, I try to be a lifelong student of it, right? So, I think you could learn from everybody. And I think that there is not one approach, whether it's for filling the pipeline, right? Whether it's for outreach, whether it's for follow-up. And I've been blessed to have some great mentors that I've learned from.
And how much sales has changed since you started?
So I don't know if it's changed that much. I still think, we are still humans, right? We buy H to H, right? We buy human to human, whether it's a business to a consumer or a business to a business, we're all still humans. And I think the need of, building rapport, right? Doing good discovery, right? We have a saying in our company that ABC isn't always be closing, it's always be curious, right? So being very curious about people and what their motivations are. And I think that's never going to change, right? So finding a problem, and solve, if your solution solves that problem, right? Or finding something that the person aspires to and see if your solution solves that problem. It's been happening since the dawn of time. When you're in Bali, right? You go back to the marketplace of Bali where people walk in and say, hey, I fish today, or I have dates today, right? We're still trading in some way, shape, or form, and that's not going to change. I think what's changed is our mediums, right? So nowadays we do Zoom calls. And when I first started, we were on the phone, we set appointments, we went to people's offices, right? Or you got on a plane, or you got in your car and you drove. Now you could do a lot of the work via Zoom. Our tools are much better today. I grew up in the old day where you used a manufacturer's guide. It was paper. Some of your audience won't even know what that is, but you would buy this and that would be your lead source, and you would call from that lead source. Now you've got LinkedIn, you've got Zoom Info, you've got Apollo, you've got LinkedIn Navigator, you've got AI that does great jobs of looking for intent and really filling things out. So I think that's going to change. I think a lot of the front end sales work, like what we call the SDR and the BDR world, I think a lot of companies are challenging that, right? Does it make sense? Is it cost effective? And will that go to AI? I think so, right? We see that for a lot of our clients. We do a lot of testing in that. Once we figure out the AI voice aspect of things, that might change. But the need to do really good discovery, the need to really bond with people, and we're in an absence of trust, especially here in the United States. But I think worldwide there's an absence of trust. To build trust and rapport with people, and really have a firm understanding of what their problems are, and explaining through stories, right, or through different variables of how your solution solves for that problem, and getting them to say yes, right? That's still the hard thing to do. It's, from day one, it's been difficult to get people to say yes. We've always had objections. Objections are the same from the 50s, from the 30s, from the 20s to the 2025, but it's still the same process.
Indeed, and you brought two words together there, like trust and AI.
Mm-hmm.
And how hard it will be to continue to get that yes in this context where people start to become more aware of the fact that a lot of businesses are using AI for not only doing the research, but as well to send personalized campaigns,
Yeah.
and even like with AI avatars or AI phone calls and stuff. How will this impact the already low trust that people have into other businesses?
It's a great question. It's something we think about a lot. There's a book by Seth Godin that says marketers ruin everything, right? And so AI in concept is a good concept, right? And it's been around forever. One of my brothers-in-laws was a part of the chess team that was AI that beat the Russian chess master. So that was back in the 90s that they created this, right? So AI and learning, right? Machine learning has been around forever. I think if you're honest and open, right? Like we have testing AI voice calls, but it says, hi, I'm an AI agent for XYZ company, right? So now you're being open and honest with people on the front end. I do think there's going to be a lot of scammers, right? I do think a lot of people are going to get hurt. I worry about the elderly, right? And that getting abused because of the AI voice will be so good. You won't be able to tell it's not me, right? Or the AI videos, we could see today there's a lag and it's not really the person. But fast forward even 3 months, 6 months, and it's going to be better and better and better. So I do think that we as marketers and salespeople and business owners have to say, okay, how do we ethically use this? And, maybe it's a disclaimer on the bottom, right? If I think about Europe is probably better with GDPR on, making, of opting people out and those type of things. So maybe there's going to be a disclaimer that this was written by AI. But listen, the AI, I've got a Nick bot two different Nick bots that was created, one by me and one by somebody else. It writes in my voice. So it's really just speeding up me getting emails out, right? Or me getting respondents out. It's still my voice, right? We've loaded it up with all of my writings. So I think ethically I could use that, right? It's just really, really, really good. And if you think about, if you think about it at the bare basics, I use Grammarly today, right? Because I'm a fast typer and I'm slightly dyslexic. So Grammarly will repair, it's AI, but it will fix all of my spelling. So ethically, that's okay to use. So I do think we have to be cautious about it. And I do believe that marketers ruin everything, especially the, let's say, the dark universe of marketing, right? And then slowly sleeps into the more traditional blue blood marketing. So we have to just be prepared for it, and we have to be open and honest with people. But trust is still, I don't think trust AI is causing the trust issue. I think the trust issue is bigger than that, and it's deeper than that. And I also think the economic impact of what's going on in America that has a ripple effect to all different nations will slow down the sales process, right? Just this morning on NPR here, they're talking about how, they're talking about the tariffs, right? And how 4 or 5 companies they're interviewing, phone hasn't rang, right? Or orders are being pulled back. But then there's somebody else that says the phone's ringing for me and I've never got these orders before, right? So there's pluses and minuses, but I think sales buying cycles are going to elongate because of the unknown, right? And I think we have to use every tool in our toolkit to move the sale forward as fast as we can. That's a long answer
Yeah,
to a short question.
yeah, but it's a good one. It's a good one because it really puts things into perspective, and especially when it comes to the current state of things. And I'm not sure who said it, but I heard recently someone say that all these economic downturns or recession, if you want, or the situation that is currently happening in the States and slowly it's affecting the entire world with tariffs, at the end of the day is just about us and our mindset. Because if we can adjust our lifestyle for these periods, we know that though it's a cycle, it will come at some point.
Yeah.
Was starting kinda during COVID, then now maybe it's accelerating and we'll hit that point that everyone is expecting for a while now since 2008. But at the end of the day, the market will pick up again.
Yeah.
The phones will ring again. The sales will continue to move on and so on. So we need to prepare for those moments.
Yeah.
And from a business perspective, how do you prepare for this type of situation in order to survive as a business?
So I started out in business in 1997, which was one of our first recessions, 97, 98, right? The first Bush one recession where, it was tight. I sold in 2008, right? I had my own company in 2008, 2009 during that economic downturn. Those were the markets kind of doing it, right? And this COVID, I was thoroughly impressed by entrepreneurs, right, and businesses, how we figured out how to do business. So I think the answer to your question is, one is you can't sit on your hands. You got to try stuff. You got to think differently. You have to take inputs from all different sources and try different things and be like an alchemist, if you will, of saying this works here. Can we apply it here? That's the entrepreneur way. That's the business way, whether you're in Bali, whether you're in Russia, whether you're in Italy, whether you're in the United States, right? How creatively can we think? I think some industries are faster at doing it. And I think some cultures are faster at adopting change and innovating and things of that nature. So that's the first thing. The second thing, if you just go to the bare bones of blocking and tackling of sales, it's you can never take your foot off the gas pedal of filling your pipeline, right? Constantly be filling your pipeline with new opportunities and new leads. Those leads may not close. That's okay. But constantly be talking to them, telling your story like some of your guests talk about, marketing to them, use different vehicles and different channels, right? We talked about the onset of YouTube. How can you be better at that channel? How can you use all the different various channels to try to communicate and constantly be filling your pipeline? Sometimes you have to take a step back and say, we've always sold XYZ, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6. Those are our products. But now maybe we have to have a lower price product to get our foot in the door or to start the conversation with people, right? So you have to look at your product offering, making sure that it's priced for Goes back to trust, right? So, okay, I will take a risk on a $5,000 product, but I won't take a risk on a $50,000 product, right? But now your sales team has to be able to communicate, and your market team has to communicate. Here's the features and benefits of the five. You can't expect the five to do what the 50 did, right? But so you have to really communicate well. You also have to change your marketing message, right? Your marketing message during times of uncertainty has to be different than the times of robustness. So your marketing department kind of has to go by the old adage of entering the mind of the consumer, right? So what are the conversations that they're having, whether it's B2B or B2C? What are they talking about? What's going on in their world, and enter that conversation for them. So that's how you do it. I've made plenty of mistakes, right? I still will, right? So I'm going to make 5 today, most likely. And the key that I keep on reverting back to is always be filling that prospecting funnel, always be figuring it out. Maybe you can't spend as much because you're constructing some cash. Okay, that's okay. But figure out different ways. I mean, you just listen to your podcast alone. You have guests that are telling you how to get their message out and their story out for, economically, lower investments, right? So we don't have to be big bands buying big, Facebook ad campaigns. We could figure out different ways to do it, whether it's organically or through content. So there's different ways. I also think that sometimes we as business owners or businesses do 2 to 3 things. And I think in these times you have to do 10 things, right? So is it that you have a newsletter, that you have a YouTube channel, that you're looking at doing Facebook, right? That you're figuring out ads, that you're doing cold outreach, that you're doing email, all the stuff that you need to do to constantly be filling that top of the funnel, but also realizing that the middle of the funnel is going to get elongated, right? Because it's going to take a little bit longer to move deals through. So how are you touching, right? And how are you adding value at the touch points, if you will? Because a lot of times we get lazy and we get sloppy, and I'm pointing my finger back at me, right? I'm not pointing it at the marketplace, but we're, hey, I'm just following up. Well, that's of no value, right? 50 different messages of, hey, I'm just following up. But hey, I saw this case study that came across from one of our clients that I thought of you. Hey, I just saw this white paper. I realized you were having this problem, right? So there's different ways to add value, whether that's through content, whether that's through stories, whether it's through different ways of getting to people. I always bet on businesses, right? I always bet on entrepreneurs. I always think that they're going to figure it out. Those that will, right? The strong will survive. It's Darwinian. Some of it might be that there's businesses out there that won't, because they won't do the work. They just grew up in the easy time. A lot of sellers today, I worry about that. A lot of sellers today have grown up with SDRs filling up their calendar, so they don't know how to prospect, right? And so now if you say, well, hey, listen, we're getting rid of the SDRs and you have to prospect, what does that look like and how does that work, right? And so, you have to think about it. I'm a big fan of cradle to grave, right? Account executives, people that fill up their pipeline and then bring that account all the way to close. And then maybe you turn it over to an in-house account executive to kind of just manage it. But, we were going to have to be crafty and think of different ways and different approaches to keep the funnel and to keep the gas. And as you talked about, the lifeblood of the business is sales. So keep that going.
Yeah, indeed. And especially in this moment, like you mentioned, to adapt, to be creative, and to find ways in which you don't just stop the gas and then you wonder why you cannot bring in leads, why you cannot continue to move your business forward. And often that's the biggest mistake, what put people out of business in this period. And apart from that, because I want to go back to filling the pipeline, but before that, I want to ask you something about that. You mentioned that you did a lot of mistakes. Any of those happen in this type of times, either in 97 or 2008 or COVID, that you can share for people to avoid?
Of course. Well, I talked about one of them is taking the foot off the gas. 2008, we had a marketing agency. Business was just coming to us, right? I thought I was the smartest guy in the world. And we had a sales floor, but I took the foot off the gas on my personal production, right? Of me building relationships and going out to strategic advisors and centers of influence. That's, I wasn't, filling that pipeline, going out and giving speeches, everything we did, advisors and centers of the in, the business owner that was just behind a desk, right? And plus that wasn't me. So what did I do? I went out and brought in a partner that was more of a back office person, right? A more financial person. And then I went back out and, pounded on doors, gave speeches, build relationship with strategic buyers or centers of influence, all the things that I did to grow the business and get it to a great place. I stopped doing because I thought the busyness, the busy work was something that you're supposed to be doing. And so you kind of have to do that. So, yeah, of course, I made that mistake. I think the other mistake is that we don't look on what's the return on investment of our lead generation, right? Or our pipeline building. And I'm maniacal about that, right? So for every dollar, I realize that there's maybe a little bit of a lag period, right? So we want to give something as a test, 30, 60, 90 days to kind of work out. But if it's not ROI positive by a certain point, you got to stop it, right? So there's a lot of people that are spending money on ad campaigns or marketing channels or media that isn't working for them. So what is that looking like? And then find the ones that are working and are ROI 10 to 1, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, whatever that is, and double down on your spend during that. Now you have to test new channels, right? I'm all for that. That's what marketing is, where we test. But you have to be doing it very, you should have a one-to-one payback at the bare minimum, as fast and furious as possible for your pipeline builder and your marketing channels. And you want to get it 2 to 1 and 3 to 1, right? As fast as you can. I also think that you have to look at, we talked a little bit about okay, I know this works, but why did I stop doing it? Right. So you have to be reflective of saying, this works. I did it, but now for some reason I stopped. So how do I get back into the rhythm of doing things? Whether that's you doing personal cold calls, whether that's you going out and meeting with referral sources and strategic advisors or whatever that is, whether it's doing the hard work of reaching out to podcast hosts like yourself and saying, hey, can I be on your podcast? Whatever that is, we all know it, right? The playbook is the playbook. We just have to make sure that we execute it. And sometimes we stop and we don't know why we stop. We just stopped, right? But other times we stop just because, we're human nature, right? So inertia sets in. We try different things. I'm, the first to, it's easy to get distracted. This world that, I got to shut down everything. I shouldn't be, I spend, we do a lot of business through LinkedIn. So I am on LinkedIn, but it's easy to go on rabbit holes, right? So I kind of have my VA do that for me. We get some level of business through Facebook, but I could be easily get lost into conversations that don't matter in my life, right? So I got to make sure that I don't do that. Or if I do it, I just do it with a timer on, right? If I know every day I need to make X amount of reach out phone calls, whether that is, I got to set that timer and do it, right? So book time on my calendar, because your calendar as an entrepreneur can get filled with busy work. I myself, so the mistakes, right? So it's easy to get distracted. And so how do you stop yourself and how do you force yourself not to get on, right? The doom scroll of media, the news doom scroll, all that stuff. You have to stop and just focus on today and every day. I have to focus on growing my business, serving my customers, and making as much profit as I possibly can, right? And you also want to save, right? Winter comes. There's the 4 seasons of business. Winter comes, so you got to be, when summer's here, you got to put away. When spring is here, you got to put away, because the fall and the winter may come and it may not be as much. So you want to have cash reserves or access to credit.
Exactly, because you can take advantage of the winter. A lot of people, speaking of financial winter that probably is upon us, like a lot of people that I know that are smart entrepreneurs, they're getting richer during this
Oh
period
yeah,
rather than when everyone is prospering and the competition is high and so on.
yep,
And that's something that, as I mentioned, smart entrepreneurs do. And of course, people that are not being driven by fear of the moment. And going a bit back to the pipeline thing, because a lot of people struggle with this, and I would like you to try to turn it into an actionable step-by-step process if you want.
sure.
Like you mentioned, having multiple channel that drives leads to your pipeline.
Mhm.
How you manage to focus if you are just a solo business owner, let's say, that is probably having an assistant or is probably having a few other people that are helping. How you make sure that your presence is, like you mentioned, like you're on social media, you're putting yourself out there through podcasts or being on stage and so on. and to identify through all those channels what are those that are bringing in the best potential leads to you, rather than just losing time doom scrolling or other things that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's a great question, Gabe. So I think the first thing, one is we talked about it as a negative, but let's talk about it as a positive. You could use AI really to maximize, right? So I have a program where I just do a voice note into Slack. That voice note gets transcribed and then gets put into a post for Facebook, Instagram post, right? So you could use AI to really maximize it. So it's going to take a little bit of money and investment to do it, or it's going to take a little bit of you sitting down and learning how to do it. But the adoption is easy, and it's just amazing to me, right? So use tools, right? So it's not manual labor. We used to have to do it manual labor, so use that. Then you want to make sure that you are using different lead sources, right, or different channels, as we've talked about, but make sure when the lead comes in and it moves even to sale, you have a tag to that lead source so you could see where it is. I'm a big believer of blocks of time on your calendar, right? So when is your energy the highest? And that's when you should be doing your prospecting. That's when you should be doing your outreach to referral sources, whatever it is, right? You have to do something. And it's easy to let the other stuff fill up, right? I'm doing research, right? I'm creating content. If you know that you have to pick up the phone and reach out to 10 people a day, you have to reach out to 10 people a day. And I know for some people it's ugly, right? So you talk about filling the pipeline for some is tough. Sure, nobody wants to make cold calls to strangers, but sometimes you have to do that level of manual labor to do to get the ball rolling. That's your responsibility. That's your responsibility to your family, right? That's your responsibility to yourself. So you have to do that. Just reach out to do it. And the way to get good at it is just to be really bad at it in the beginning and just fight through and just, get kind of, the first call you're going to make, the person's going to scream at you. Okay, that's fine, right? It's not you, it's them. Let's just keep on moving on. So now you want tactics, which I think is very good that you want that for your audience. So tactically, let's go for low cost to no cost, right? And then kind of work our way up. So as an entrepreneur, I could use the phone, right? And so I could call prospects. I could call potential referral sources. I could call COIs, which is centers of influence, people that may be able to send business my way, right? But they will never buy from me or they never refer, but they'll connect me to people, right? So these are hyper connectors. So I'm going to work the phones for those people. 5 a day, 10 a day, 15 a day, whatever it is. Now let's go to even easier stuff to do because I don't have to put myself out there. This is from Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Who are your top 100 dream clients or dream referral source or dream centers of influence? Break it down to 20 if that's all you can. Now stalk them on LinkedIn. Don't stalk them in a creepy way, but stalk them on LinkedIn. When they are making posts, you put something very positive about that. Or, hey, great thought. Don't just use the, hey, good job or excellent points or anything like that. Really think this through, right? Think through posts on LinkedIn. A lot of times people will be upset about posts on LinkedIn or posts on YouTube and realize that people that are going to make your buying decision, right? Business owners, VPs, whoever you're selling to, they don't subscribe or they don't like, but they do read and they do watch the video. They just aren't going to hit like, right? CEOs aren't liking stuff all day long, right? That's us. So you have to figure out, okay, how do I get that? Now you could get out there and you create a newsletter. You had a phenomenal guest that talked about how to create a newsletter. That's something that you could do and just say, hey, listen, I have a newsletter. I share good thoughts about marketing and sales and filling your pipeline. Love to give it to you. Love to send it to you. Is it okay if I send it to you in your email? So now you're doing something low cost, but you got to do this. Now write your newsletter on the weekends. Don't do it Monday through Friday, or write it at night to get it out. And then you could do shorts, right? You could do Instagram shorts or Facebook shorts or YouTube shorts. So you have to do these things. And this is the manual labor that none of us want to do, myself included, but you have to kind of figure it out and fight through it. And all these things that I gave you don't cost you anything. Right. So you might be a solopreneur that's just starting. It's like you lost your corporate job and you want to try something. Great. Let's just figure it out and figure out where your audience is. Right. So if you think about Gary Halbert, how do you start a successful hamburger stand? Right. It's not great product. It's not great food. It's not great marketing even. It's going to where hungry people are. Right. So you got to go to where the hungry people are for your products and services and making them aware of what you do. If it's getting on stages, right, which is approach for some people, you got to make a list of all the different stages, right? And you got to go to networking groups. You got to go to the right networking groups because you could waste a lot of time with that. And there's a lot of people out there trying to sell to each other versus decision makers. So there's a lot of different things you could do from the blocking and tackling perspective. And you just kind of have to do it. And I know it's not fun and it's not sexy. And some of the work is hard, and picking up the phone and making cold calls is ugly, or responding to people or acting like a little bit of a positive stalker on LinkedIn and Facebook is got negative annotations, but realizing that you just have to kind of do the work, Gabe, to get to where you need to go, which is constantly filling that funnel. As you get a little bit more cash in the business, you could offset that to a VA to do that. Right? Or you could use AI tools to do that when you're ready to make those investments. But you got to do the hard work in the beginning just to do it yourself, right? And as well as you should know, right? You should know how to do certain things in filling the pipeline in your business. So I think those are pretty good tactical things. We can move up to now. Those are free stuff, right? And that's sweat equity, right? That's kind of just doing the work. Now, well, if your people are on Facebook, which I don't know if they are or not, right, you could start running ads, right? And you could get by for $1 a day, $2 a day, $3 a day to test the ads. Put them through a funnel. You've had some great people on that will teach people how to do that. Try YouTube, right? Try keywords, try SEO, right? So now you're trying different vehicles to get people out. Write a book, get that book on Amazon, get that book out to people. It's part of your lead magnet campaign. If you could get to them, direct mail is tough in this environment because a lot of people are working from home, right? So how do you get to where they need to go? But direct mail is another methodology to get through to people. I was just on with folks, and people are going back to the old school direct mail, which are kind of shock and awe packages to get to. If you've got some money and margin in your business, right, getting to people. And so that's going to now you got to spend a little money. I've not seen a lot of success with any of my clients and myself with LinkedIn ads, but certainly LinkedIn as a channel of one-to-one communication or one-to-many communication works very well. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is another way, right? So you get 150, LinkedIn messages in messages, right? You're going to have to manually do that, right? So that's the tools. If you're more in the B2B environment, if you're in the B2C environment, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, those are going to be the places. YouTube are going to be the places where you need to spend now some money. You're going to be running ads. And so that's another way to kind of fill the funnel. Podcasts, another great medium to fill the funnel. Podcasts like this, other ones that are out there. Speeches, we talked about that. Some stages you're going to have to pay to get access to, or you're going to have to do constant outreach to meeting planners and people that are bookers, and realizing that it's going to take 30, 60, 90 days to get in the queue of getting in front of stages. Those are easy vehicles to get to, right? Going to events, sponsorship. This is more expensive, right? But figure out if you sell to IT directors, well, there's a number of events that IT directors go to. So do a sponsorship there. What I mean by a sponsorship is don't just put your logo on something, have a booth, right? Maybe you're buying a speakers or a breakout session to give your speech, push people back to your booth, give them your book or whatever it is, give them some value. And now you're building your funnel that way. There's not one way, there's 100 ways. And you got to try the 100 ways using the different methodologies that we talked about along the way. So those are some tactics off the top of my head. There may be others, but I just kind of threw those out there.
Yeah, there are a lot of them indeed. And if I'm listening to this conversation and I'm like, and I thought it's so hard to find ways to get clients. Now you got the answer. Like
Okay.
Nick shared it with you. And the reality is that indeed you either pay with sweat or with money, but you have to
Correct.
find a way to bring in and fill in that pipeline. And that's the reality of business that a lot of new entrepreneurs or those that were kind of entering this stage in the honeymoon of the economic situation in which it was so easy to get referrals, it was so easy to get clients in the door. And now when people are more reluctant to buy and the trust is not there, it's harder and harder for some to fill that pipeline. And on this note, what would be your advice for those that kind of hate putting in the sweat? I know it's a tricky question because you either put money or you put time,
Yeah.
but it's very hard for them to like hear that no, either
Yeah.
on a phone call or in a message or in an email. And in the same time, they're running out of money and they don't really have to, they have to put food on the table. And what should they do? Either on the mindset part of things or easy ways of fixing this pipeline problem they have?
Okay. It's it's a very good question. Great question. And it's real, right? I mean, we deal with it all the time. We deal with self-doubt. We deal with negative thoughts. So there's a mentor that I studied, and then I had an opportunity to work with him. The gentleman's by the name of Dan Kennedy, right? So you may have heard his name, or some of your listeners may have heard him. He's one of the godfathers of marketing, one of the godfathers of direct response marketing. And he was being interviewed on stage at a big event that we were holding. And the interviewer asked him, a question from the audience, Dan, what do you say to business owners that want to stop, just tired of marketing, right? And tired of selling and tired of doing all of the grind work in this? And he said, that's entrepreneurship. Right? You can never stop every day. You have to do something every day to fill that funnel, right? Whether it's shipping out, mailing out your books, right? Whether, I first started my agency with a direct response letter and an envelope and a big package. And my goal, and I did every day, was to mail out 25. So every day I went to the post office to mail 25 of these packets. I still remember to this day, I think the average mailing for the pack was $1.50, right? So I spent about $25 a day to $30 a day mailing these out. I knew I had to wait 3 days and then I could call those people. So I filled my funnel that way, right? Then I put postcards in the mail. That's how we grew it. This was before email became very popular. I'm dating myself, but 2006, right? Then we would do email blasts and all the other stuff. So the mindset thing, let's talk about the mindset thing because the mindset thing is real and we talk a lot about it in sales. So the first thing you have to look at yourself in the mirror, if I'm struggling and saying, I'm a good person, right? My identity is Nick Loise. My identity is not my role, which is a business owner or a salesperson. My identity is I'm a good father. I try to be the best father I can, try to be the best husband I try to be a good Christian, try to be a good student of the world as well as citizen of the world. That's my identity and that's who I am, right? So I kind of have to work through that. My role is that of a salesperson, right? My role is that as a business owner. My role is that as a marketer, whatever that is. And so nothing that the marketplace says to me about my role, i.e., if I pick up the phone and cold call, is going to make me less of my identity. It's never going to change who I am. So I shouldn't get mental stimulation. I don't want to say this. I shouldn't look for the marketplace to build up my identity and my self-worth, right? I should do that myself, and I should do that through the important things in life, which is our family, our friends, our community, giving back, being a good citizen of the world, being a good person. That's how I get my stuff. But a lot of times we have it in our roles. The second thing you have to realize is you have no idea who the other person is on the other side of the phone. And if they hang up on you, who the hell cares, right? And they're not going to remember it if you call them back 2 days ago, right? And so now I go into the gym and I want to lift heavy weights, right? Well, the first time I put a lot of weight on, it's going to be tough, and it's going to get better and easier the more reps I do. So to get better at something, right? And to have that mental, it doesn't matter, you have to do more reps, right? So you have to do it. And as we said about it, right, it's gonna be horrible, right? And the first couple ones are gonna be horrible, but make sure you have a good script. And if your audience needs help with that, just have them reach out to us, and we'll do a quick call with them, and listen to their script, and make a couple quick adjustments. And that's on us, right? That's our give back to you and your audience. But you have to have a good script that's pain driven and breaking through, and not about you, but about them and what they want. The second thing is that nothing is going to change until you take action, right? So if you are tight on money and revenue and deals are falling through, that happens, right? That's business, that's commerce, that's the world. And sometimes that's a little bit of the world testing you, right? Just 2 weeks ago, I had two deals that I thought were going to drop, right? And mentally, I just kind of spent that, right? And just, and they didn't choose us. Now they may come back to us, right? One picked up the phone and said, let's talk Friday, but deals will fall through, or deals will get kicked out, or deals will get stalled because they're looking at the world from their perspective, not from your perspective. So you have to just keep on realizing that and keep on filling out that funnel to keep going. So I think entrepreneurship is tough. And if it wasn't, everybody would do it. It's tough, and it takes chutzpah, and it takes gut, and it takes a lot of stuff. And I think, you know, we are the explorers of many years ago, right? We are the ones that went out into the marketplace, went out into the world and looked for, bringing other goods and services back. And you realize it's tough, and and sometimes you feel like everything is against you. And that's when you need a good community. You need good inputs, right? Like this podcast, other podcasts, books. You need to have the support of those around you of saying, hey, listen, I'm having a really bad day. 3 things went wrong this week that I didn't think I went wrong. And so you got to have open and honest dialogue with folks. And then find stuff to enrich you, whether that's church, whether that's yoga, whether that's exercise, whether that's going out to a community of friends. We were talking in the pre about a community of entrepreneurs, being around other entrepreneurs, not to get in a pity party, but just to realize that everybody's struggling. Everybody's having those issues. And so how do we lift everybody up? We've just launched a community of sales leaders, right? Because I think being a sales leader is very, very difficult. It's much better. It's much more difficult than being a salesperson, because now you've got to manage the personalities of all these salespeople, and they need a peer group. So we've created that peer group for this reason, right? Share best practices, non-competitive environment, what's working, what's not working, and just talk through your problems. Think of it the support group of old, right? And we all need that. And we're humans, right? So we're all about humans. We're all about the gathering. There's a book I just picked up, and a woman in the bookstore stopped my wife and I and said, that's the best book I've ever read. And I think it's called Gathering. So I can't wait to dive into it. I have some other books I got to finish first, but it's about, you and I were talking about this, Gabe. We desire to be around other people. So find a community of other entrepreneurs, of other salespeople, of other marketers that understand what you're going through, because the corporate employee that you're going to tell your problems to doesn't understand it. He shows up, right? And if the company's big enough, he or she could hide for a couple months, not doing anything, and still get a paycheck, right? You can do that. But as an entrepreneur, you can't, right? And that's why the rewards are so great, right? That's why the journey is so difficult, because the rewards are great. So we have to kind of realize that and put that in perspective.
It all starts there, right? With awareness. First of all, if you become an entrepreneur, you need to build that thick skin, because bad things will happen. You won't close some deals. You'll lose money. You'll make mistakes and so on. And that's why we are pioneers, like you said. Like, as entrepreneurs, we need to try stuff. We need to do new things. Otherwise, things might not work out. And building that awareness and starting with yourself, and not being put down by, oh, I just hear a no, that person closed the door in front of me, and so on. And a quick story, I start like that. I start in sales, and I used to hate it. Like, I was like, oh my God, who's that person that thought to scream at me on the phone, or to swear at me, or to be that disrespectful and so on. But after slowly realizing that's just them projecting their insecurities and their problems and so on, and probably I bothered that person, but either way, they didn't supposed to behave that way. And when you don't take that personally, like you well said, and after that you move to the next call, and you get better at it, and so on. And that person that used to hate sales, I start loving it, and I start moving it from that place of this is what I have to do in order to survive in
Yeah.
business. And in general, we sell all the time without realizing. We need to pitch our own ideas, or even if you found a partner, we need to sell ourselves. And sales has different intricacies, and that's what I love about it. And when you arrive at that point of being secure and doing well, and how you expand yourself better. You mentioned one thing that I love, to go a step further as, for example, sales leader, being join community like yours, or being part of other gatherings where people exchange ideas. But what else can we do in order to make sure that we not only deliver consistent results for our business, but as well growing as individuals and as a business?
Well, I think we grow by expansion, right? We grow by pushing ourselves and trying new things, right? So some of it might be you're doing really good in one business line. And so maybe you start a second one, right? Or you say, you know what, I really have kind of conquered XYZ. And so now I want to teach others how to do XYZ or one, two, three. And so you go on podcasts or you create your own YouTube station or things of that nature. I'm a firm believer that those that are doing it should be the teachers of it while they're still doing it, not the person that just is doing it, just teaching it, right? And I think we talked about this, that we get depressed. We get depressed because of this, right? We get depressed because we get on Facebook and we get on Instagram, and everybody, I call it the Lake Wobegon, which is a very US based, it's a book and it was a radio show. And he opened up the show by saying, all the men are strong, all the women are good looking, and all the children are above average. So when you go on Facebook and Instagram and you look at other entrepreneurs, everybody's killing it, right? They've all rented the Maserati for the day, right? They've all got in front of a private plane. No, I never see a private plane flying. I only see people in it, right? Or walking up the stairs. The rented Airbnb. There's a great Instagram, uh, which is in essence breaking down all of these, these falsities around business. And I think it's called Ball Busters, and I forgive the vulgarity of what it is, but it's just, these guys that are up on stage saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And, they kind of then do the research and say, you've got 42 lawsuits against you, right? So there's just so much fakeness, and it's a horrible culture, right? We've all want to be on a reality show. We all hold these things up to things, and we have to realize that this is just fake, right? And it's a house of cards and it's a house of glass, and realize that, and stop comparing yourselves to others, right? Also, you may see entrepreneurs that are really doing well, that are doing great, that are really where you want to go and are really ethical people and aren't, just kind of showing it out there. You as a business owner or an entrepreneur starting out, you're on chapter 1. Don't compare yourself to their chapter 16, right? Or their chapter 30, because they went through the winters of the world, the falls of the world, the springs and the summer. They went through the seasons. They had all of those growing pains, right? I had a great mentor, and he was a phenomenal entrepreneur. And we were in the parking lot. We did some work together, and I'm in the parking lot and I'm talking to him. We're by our cars. He had a Mercedes. I didn't, right at that time. And I said, when do you stop being afraid? I said, I'm afraid every day. He goes, I can never rest. I'm afraid every day. This is a guy that, well in his 60s and still afraid, right? I remember talking to, as a young man, this stuck, right? I was talking to a girlfriend at the time. Her father was a very big entrepreneur. He had a big business there, a collection agency. I said, what's it like? He goes, Nick, every day You make the sign of the cross, you walk in the doors, and you try to serve your clients and try to find new ones, right? Because that's it, right? And so, I think sometimes, we are looking at other outside sources of influence and thinking that that's reality when it's not. We're also comparing ourselves to people that have been doing it for 20 years, 15 years, or 5 years, or 3 years, and just have figured it out. And we're just starting. Now, learn from them, learn from the good ones, learn from the honest and ethical ones, ask them questions. I've never met an entrepreneur that was successful that didn't have time to help another entrepreneur. They will always
Good
answer a
point.
question. I've never met one. They are gracious. They give, they give, they give. They've been there, right? And it's part of it is they like the mentoring, right? And so don't get over your high horse if you're struggling and ask for help. That's one of the things, right? Don't suffer alone, right? It's not like anybody, if you've ever had a family member or a loved one or a friend suffering from addiction, don't suffer alone, right? Get around in an environment, get into something, realize that, okay, I need help to fight my way through this. Whether it's I got to get more customers, I got to find revenue, I'm in a bad state. Most entrepreneurs have also been there, right? I was just reading Bill Gates. Bill Gates said it wasn't until I think he was in his late 40s that he finally thought that Microsoft was okay. You think about that. Right. The guy was a billionaire, right? He was just okay. I think we're okay. We're going to make it through the next winter, and so realize that that's what's going on in this world.
And speaking of asking for help,
Sure.
if I'm listening to this conversation, where I can reach out to you to get help?
Yeah. So they could email us, right? Nick at salesperformanceteam.com or info at salesperformanceteam.com. VA gets info. Nick goes right to me so that you got my personal one. You could hit me up on LinkedIn, Nick or Nicholas Loise, Loise. Facebook, you can, but it takes me a little bit longer, right? Because I have somebody manage the Facebook inbox because you get a lot of crazy DMs. But hit me up on that. Instagram is not really business orientated for me. It's just really family, friends, that type of thing. And so those are the best channels, right? You could hit our website. We got a lot of free resources. I want people to be helpful. So you could go to salesperformanceteam.com. Get on our email list. There's a lot of free resources we send to you immediately. I said I'd help you with your script if you're struggling, right? Or you just want to role play. Just hit us up, right? Listen, the first thing to do is ask for help, and we're here to help, right? I've been blessed. There's been great mentors in my life. I've been blessed that Gabe allowed me on his podcast. I love talking about sales. I love talking about entrepreneurship. And if you think we could help you and add some value, please reach out.
And I'll put all the links down below as well for easy access.
Sure.
And yeah, it was a pleasure, Nick, to have you and to hear all the insights. Personally, I learned a lot, and hopefully those listening start not only taking notes, but actually put them into practice, because without that, it's just information. And if it's one thing they should apply next week, what that will be?
Take action. Pick 3 things that we talked about today and take action on those 3 things. That's the only way to get through the minutia. It's the only way to get through the pain. That's the only way to get through the fear, is to take some level of action, right? And it might be small. So you have to make cold calls, and you don't want to make cold calls. Well, just make 5. 5 in the morning, 5 in the afternoon. Now you made 10. And of those 5 in the morning and of those 5 in the afternoon, the next day send them an email. Now you've touched those people 2 times. And maybe now you go to LinkedIn or Facebook and you reach out to them. Now you've touched those people 3 times. And then you circle back and give them another call. Now you've got a warm list because they know who you are. You're in front of them. It's just a little bit easier. So just take some action. There's a great book, right? And it's all about actions. Robert Ringer, I think it's titled Action. Right. And sometimes I was complaining about this with my wife. I think a lot of business books really are 30 pages, but they make them 200 pages with a lot of stories. Right. So the stories are fun. They tell us stuff, but you could distill it down to one thing, which is you have to take action. Money loves speed, right? Money loves action, and it's not going to come to you. It will go to where it's used, right? Go even the Bible, right? The story of the talents. Don't hide your talent away. Don't bury it. Use it. Bring it to the world. Everybody here that's listening is an entrepreneur or small business owner. You have value. You just have to go out and have conversations with people that could help you bring that value to the world and then some.
100% agree. Because without that action, nothing will happen. Neither did this podcast, right? We both took action, and here we are.
Yeah. And like I said, when I started, listen, thank you for doing this. This is not easy. It's a labor of love and it's a labor of joy, but you've brought some phenomenal guests. So if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, go back and listen to the other ones and like them and subscribe and send it out to people that are struggling or are entrepreneurs yourself. Because there's like 10 that I listened to 3 and I want to listen to 10 more. The listen to one about, Taking a Stance by Nate Brennan, right? Which is, path to ownership, taking life head on. I think there's some great stuff. The ones about YouTube I want to listen to. So you've got some great guests. You've brought some great guests. You have over 100, which is not easy. All right. It's a yeoman's work. It's a labor of love. And thank you for bringing this podcast to the world.
Thank you. Thank you for guests like you that make it happen. Really, really appreciate it.